Skywalker 2. Braindead zombie criticisms.
You know, I really miss the days when only nerds liked Star Wars. Nerds tend to be, smart. You really can't say that about a lot of these people that you meet on Twitter these days. You know the ones I'm talking about. They're the people who saw the very ending of The Force Awakens, and they saw that look of rage and anger on Luke Skywalker's face, and they said,
"Duh, oh boy, he's so happy that Obi-Wan Kenobi's granddaughter finally tracked him down. Now he's gonna train her and reveal the real reason why he's been hiding on the island for 10 years. It's some kind of super secret cool mission that will help them defeat Snoke."
Yeah, those kind of people. They had a whole bunch of complaints and concerns when The Force Awakens came out, mostly having to do with Rey being a girl and not earning stuff. But all of their various complaints, like 99% of them, have been cleared up by the subsequent movies. But they still hold on to them. Their initial gripes have just been repeated so much that they have become what we call canards. And what's a canard? Well, a canard is a fancy French word that means stupid, dumb, wrong shit that people say because they hear other people saying it and then they repeat it, and it just keeps being wrong no matter how many times they repeat it. A canard is a brain-dead zombie criticism that just won't die, no matter how often you argue against it. Everything I'm going to be talking about here is not just stuff that I heard 5 years ago, it's stuff that people on Twitter are still bringing up now. And like I said, most of it should be settled. Just the fact that Rey turned out to be a Palpatine with a stratospherically high Palpatine midichlorian count in her blood, that should clear up almost all of it. But it doesn't. They just keep repeating them. These canards, these brain-dead zombie criticisms. Let's go through some of these right now.
Duh, it's wrong that Rey was able to use the Jedi mind trick on an unsuspecting stormtrooper. That kind of thing takes years of training.
Wait, are you sure? It seems kind of simple to me. Basically, you just have to look at somebody and talk at them. There's no, frickin' coding involved. Plus, when you think about it, she was trained. Kylo Ren did the mind trick on her, trying to penetrate her mind. He basically showed her how to do it. Look, if a kid sees someone do a cartwheel, that kid could probably do a cartwheel by themselves, without years of gymnastics training. Plus, she's a frickin' Palpatine. I can't prove this now, but prior to 2015, if you asked the average Star Wars nerd if Emperor Palpatine's grandchild would be able to do a Jedi mind trick, they would probably say, yeah, of course. Palpatine blood, much power. Kylo Ren showed her how to do it. She has the midichlorians. All she had to do was look at the guy and talk at him. It's not that crucial. Look, if there's a Star Wars novel or an episode of the Clone Wars where Yoda goes into great detail about how doing the Jedi mind trick takes years of meditation and practice, point it out to me. I'm willing to listen.
Duh, that's bullshit how Rey was able to fly the Millennium Falcon and not crash and die. This is like feminism, like girls can do anything now. This has never happened before in Star Wars.
You've got to be kidding me. Luke Skywalker goes from driving a speeder on Tatooine to suddenly jumping in the cockpit of an X-Wing and leading an assault on the Death Star and doing something that nobody else could do. 'Cause he used the Force. And then you have little baby Anakin, who's the greatest human pilot in the galaxy by the time he's frickin' 8 years old. I'm the only human who can do it.
You must have Jedi reflexes.
Why? Because he used the Force. These dorks keep saying that you have to see Rey specifically being trained in flight for her to be able to do this. I mean, that's ridiculous. Did baby Anakin, did he have some grizzled old man standing behind him saying, yes, the boy has great reflexes, but I taught him everything he knows about pod racing. Of course not. There was no need for it. You see Rey going around Jakku on her speeder, very similar to what Luke did. She's familiar with the Millennium Falcon if she knows that Unkar Plutt put a compressor on the hyperdrive. The Millennium Falcon is not like some legendary, complicated thing. It's an old Corellian freighter that's been modified. Come on, this girl has spent her entire life growing up in a place that's nothing but empty space and ships. And these dorks are freaked out that she can fly a ship? Look, this is like, pretend Rey grew up in the most backwoods area of Kentucky imaginable. Some tiny little shithole town in Kentucky. city, and there's nothing around but tractors and four-wheelers and dirt bikes and pickup trucks and 18-wheelers, and she spent her whole life working on these vehicles. Then one day she's trying to evade the police and she jumps in a Jeep and drives away. And people start freaking out like, oh my god, where did she learn to drive stick shift? Who taught her? That's impossible. I mean, explain to me how this is anything but sexism. You know what I find kind of funny? Back during the prequel era, George Lucas himself, he created this planet called Naboo. It's the most beautiful, most peaceful, most democratic, most idyllic planet we've ever seen in Star Wars. And it's always ruled by a young queen. The Nabooians, they just elect young women to rule them because they think that they have, like, innocence and wisdom or whatever. The main one, of course, is Padme. Not only is she smart and wise and good, but she also kicks ass in a fight. Hell, she holds her own in, like, the giant death battle on the Colosseum in Geonosis alongside 2 experienced Jedi. Is it possible that Naboo royalty is given combat training? When someone becomes queen, do they get like an intensive 2-year course on how to fight people? That's never explained. That's not in the movie, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because this is Star Wars. This just kind of shows you how dumb and vicious people have gotten. Imagine if Kathleen Kennedy had come up with the whole idea of Naboo. These dorks would have lost their fucking minds. I mean, come on, if you think that Leia being a badass general is somehow not feminist, if you think having a perfect planet always ruled by a young woman is not feminist, but then Rey getting in a vehicle and not immediately killing herself is somehow a grand feminist statement, you're just not thinking about this clearly. You're just repeating these canards. It's just sad.
Duh, it's wrong that Rey was able to beat Kylo Ren in their first lightsaber duel. She's never even used one before, and Kylo Ren is like a highly trained Jedi Master. This is bullshit.
See, this is yet another case where you should take the information that you learned in the subsequent movies and go back and apply it to this one. We now know beyond the shadow of a doubt that Kylo Ren was really not trying to kill Rey. They're a dyad in the Force. He sensed that connection. He was immediately smitten with her. He was pulling his punches. He probably wasn't fighting as hard as he could have. And Kylo Ren may be a total incel, but even he knows that if you end a fight by cutting off a girl's hand or a foot or whatever, she's probably not going to want to date you. And if that weren't enough, I mean, they go out of their way to handicap him. Think about it this way. Let's say you have Steph Curry playing one-on-one against a really talented high school kid. Who are you going to put your money on? Steph Curry. But what if, before the match, what if you shoot Steph Curry in the side with a shotgun? Then who are you going to bet on? I'd put my money on the high school kid. That's what they did to Kylo Ren. They kneecapped him. They had Chewbacca shoot him in the side with a frickin' blaster. He may have had more training, but that really kind of evened the odds. Plus, on top of that, where do you get the impression that Kylo Ren is some kind of insanely skilled duelist? If someone has a lifetime of lightsaber dueling experience, they look like this. Kylo Ren don't fight like that. He's a thug who's just kind of swinging wildly. This is what he does. That does not look like a lifetime of training to me. What, you think Luke trained him to be like a perfect killing machine? Come on, we don't really see Luke training Kylo Ren, but you can imagine that he was kind of a peaceful teacher like Mr. Miyagi. I mean, come on, don't you think that Luke told his students, like every other day, that he didn't beat the Emperor through physical fighting skills? He beat him with peace and love and forgiveness and compassion and all that other soy. Luke Skywalker's training this troubled nephew of his. You think his first priority is going to teach him to be a perfect murder machine? I don't think so. On top of all that, Rey, she has the energy, the rage, the momentum on her side. In the Star Wars universe, being angry can make you powerful. Kylo Ren is injured, he's unbalanced, and he's holding back. Whereas she's giving it everything she has. She has no reason at all to hold back against this guy. If you think it's weird that Rey was able to beat Kylo Ren in a lightsaber fight, she did it the exact same way that Luke beat Vader at the end of the Return of the Jedi. Come on, you have like this farm boy who's never had any real lightsaber training, and he's fighting the mighty Darth Vader, one of the most feared Jedi of all time. How does Luke win? Just with rage and anger and energy, that intensity. Luke had it on his side, and so did Rey. This is easy to explain. I actually had some dork on Twitter try and sit there and argue with me about how those two situations are not at all similar. Yeah, they are. They're extremely similar. I mean, geez, this is one of the most used tropes in action cinema. How many times have we seen a plucky underdog that has less training and less raw power overcome a superior opponent? About 1,000,000 times. Have you ever seen any Rocky movies? Look, in real life, this guy would never be able to outpunch this guy. But he can because it's a movie. In most normal situations, Daniel San would not be able to beat Johnny Lawrence. Johnny Lawrence has way more training and he outweighs Daniel by like 50 pounds. But Daniel wins. How? He gets lucky. Johnny makes a mistake. Daniel was just trying harder. This stuff happens in real combat sports all the time. It's called an upset.
Duh, there's no way that Holly Holm is gonna be able to beat Ronda Rousey. Wait, what?
It's an accident of fate. You know, shit happens. I'm not really big on the Bible, but even the people who wrote the Bible knew this.
I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happeneth to them all.
That's a fancy way of saying shit happens. We've seen the underdog triumph in 1,000,000 movies, but the 1,000,001st time it happens, these dorks freak out about it. In The Rise of Skywalker, they have their rematch, and in that one, Kylo's unhurt, and he's the one who has kind of the momentum on his side, while Rey is desperate and unbalanced this time around. And he beats her pretty easily, until his mom breaks it up. God. They fight each other 2 times with different results. That's what's called balance. One of the funny thing about arguing with all these assholes on Twitter is that sometimes their little complaints are completely contradictory. This one guy, he said it was an enormous plot hole that Finn did not instantly recognize Han Solo the first time he met him. That he would recognize Han Solo on sight immediately. I explained all the reasons why that is not true. Then, years later, some other dork, he argued it was a plot hole that Finn was able to recognize Lando. And he demanded some kind of convoluted explanation of how Finn, after spending a year with the Resistance, you know, talking to Leia, talking about the old days, meeting her friends, how after all that he could possibly recognize Lando Calrissian. I mean, like I said, nerds are supposed to be smart people. You're supposed to be able to think about these things. People have just lost that ability.
Duh, it's a plot hole that Admiral Holdo didn't just tell Poe about her plan.
I am not going over that one again.
Sorry, getting a little worked up there. You know, you might be asking yourself, like, does this really mean anything? Is it really worth it to argue about Star Wars with a bunch of nerds online? Clearly, I think it is, or I wouldn't be doing it. And it does kind of tie into larger stuff. It ties into politics and these competing worldviews that we have in America. I mean, let's face it, if you run across someone on Twitter who hates Rey, there's a good chance that they also love Trump. If you believe some stupid and wrong shit about Star Wars, then you probably believe some stupid and wrong shit about everything else. If you're someone who genuinely believes that J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy didn't set out to make good movies, they intentionally set out to ruin Star Wars with feminism because they hate the fans and it's their lifelong dream to destroy Luke Skywalker, then you probably believe a bunch of other conspiracy nonsense too. You probably believe stuff like,
Duh, the New Deal actually made the Great Depression worse. Duh, Iraq really did have weapons of mass destruction, so we had to invade them. Hillary Clinton murdered Seth Rich. She was trying to protect her emails that proved about the pedophile pizza parlor thing I read about. Barack Obama's birth certificate was fake. I saw that on Facebook. Donald Trump has done a good job fighting the coronavirus. No one could have done anything more than what he already did.
When I point out all this stupid crap that people say about the Star Wars sequels, it's just another way of standing up for truth in a world that's being consumed by lies and ignorance. You know, there's this one little anecdote I want to tell, and I almost don't want to because it sounds too on the nose. You'll think that I'm making it up, but I swear to God I'm not. I used to work with this guy. He was very right-wing. His name was Dave. Older guy. He was as conservative as it gets. Good guy, though. I liked working with him. But when the subject of The Force Awakens came up, the first thing he said was literally this.
The only thing I know about that movie is that some girl picks up a lightsaber for the first time and wins a fight. That doesn't seem right to me.
And I said, well, Dave, I mean, that's kind of true, but there were other factors. This girl had a lifetime of fighting experience in the wasteland. The villain was badly wounded by Chewbacca, and the villain wasn't really trying to kill her. He was trying to turn her to the dark side. And when Dave heard that, he said,
All right, that makes a lot more sense now.
I don't really know the guy anymore. I don't know if he ever saw The Force Awakens, but I mean, hey, you do what you can, am I right? You know, a couple weeks ago, it was May 4th, Star Wars Day, and I was scrolling Twitter and I was seeing all this love for Star Wars, all this beautiful, inspiring Star Wars love. Everyone was praising the end of the Clone Wars for being one of the best things ever. People were saying, you know what? After seeing it a few times, I really love The Rise of Skywalker. People were getting excited about whatever's coming next in Star Wars, all these projects that might be directed by Rian Johnson or Taika Waititi. And it was nice seeing all that love. For a brief shining moment, I actually forgot about all the whiners and haters. And then, of course, I saw something that reminded me of it, some bullshit like,
Tune in tonight to the Salty Nerd Podcast. Our guest Doomcock and Anal Cunt will be discussing how Star Wars is dead, and we're gonna have an official funeral for it. We celebrate the death of Star Wars.
There's still all these basement dwellers marching around, banging on their pots and pans, trying to convince everybody that Star Wars is bad now. But they're not going to. They're not going to win. All these dudes with no kids who say that they're going to pass on the true Star Wars to the younger generation. As if all these kids coming up right now, as if they're actually going to listen to them. They're just going to stop magically liking Rey and Ahsoka Tano and The Mandalorian because a bunch of 45-year-old dipshits want to sit there in their basements and talk about how Han and Luke and the Death Star, that's the only Star Wars that ever will matter. No, man. Time moves on. Things evolve. Love wins. All your bitter hatred, it's going to be forgotten. That's just the way it is, baby. Okay, there's a million other Star Wars criticisms I could address, but I think I'm going to end it here. In the next videos, I definitely want to move on to some more interesting topics. Topics such as Rey motherfucking Skywalker, and also female Star Wars characters. Should they have boobs, and how many boobs should they have? How much boob is acceptable? I know you're going to want to hear that, so stay tuned.
I'm unstoppable and I fully accept these powers.